on the 9th of December 2021. Can I welcome all members and officers to this meeting of the Development Control Committee, which due to the government's advice is to practice social distancing, will be held virtually. This meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as practical following the meeting. Everyone participating in this meeting will be accessing this meeting from remote locations. Please could everyone ensure that the mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda. I will now ask officers to present a summary of the key reports. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch off their cameras at this point. But I will also ask that, with the exception of myself as chairperson, at other times keep your cameras and microphones switched off, as this will help to minimize any background noise interference to ensure the connection remains as stable as possible. If any members and officers wish to raise a point or question, they should press the hands up icon on the screen at the top right hand side of the Microsoft Teams window, and I will come to you in order I receive the request. Please know your hand once you have finished speaking. This chat button has been disabled for this meeting. Please do not use microphones until invited to do so. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones out the meeting, and where necessary, will mute those not being used. Right. To ensure that as and when I invite them to I will now ask the officers on Democratic Services that I gotta check things out today. Sorry. I'll ask as and when invite to speak during the course of the meeting to ensure the microphones and cameras are switched off when not in use. That's for the officers. I will now proceed to the agenda business. Number one, apologies, please. I got two. Councillor Richard Young and Councillor Webster. Are there any more apologies, please?
Hi, Chair. Councillor Hussain is having trouble connecting because of I think the broadband is down in his area. So he may not be joining us.
Mark, that's right there, but I just at the bottom of the takeout now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Right. Right, item 1. 1 second. Right, I'm going to start now. Bridgend Tennis Club, Church Road, Merthyr.
Chair, sorry to come in. Can you ask for declarations of interest?
Oh, sorry. Any declarations of interest, please? All right. Number 3, approval of the minutes, please. Mover, seconder.
Move.
Thank you.
Second.
Sorry, Chair, I needed to declare an interest. I couldn't get the hand up. Quick.
I can see it now, Nola.
Right, can I declare a personal interest as a member of Porthcawl Town Council, but take no part in planning matters?
So you can stay then. Thank you, Nora. Right. Item 5, there is no addendum sheet. Right. Item 7, Bridgend Tennis Club, Church Road off Merthyr Road, Bridgend. Right. This is Phil Thomas's. Phil?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. When you're ready, please, Phil.
Thanks, will do. Thank you, Chair.
Ross, could you knock your camera, please? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Right, Phil.
Right, members are probably reasonably familiar with the location of Bridgend Tennis Club.
Phil, would like to put your screen on, please?
Of course I can, yeah, not a problem.
You can all see you then.
Do you really want to? There we are, there's my face. Yeah, members probably reasonably familiar with where Bridgend Tennis Club is, very close to Newbury's Fields, served by an access that comes from Earthamar Road. Not the best access in the world, but obviously long-standing facility and an access that's been well used for many years. It also serves a number of properties. The actual tennis centre is on, obviously, almost like a floodplain area, but some of the surrounding land is elevated. The properties on Glenorgle Road, Earthamar Road are elevated above. It's almost in a bit of a bowl of the actual tennis club. The application before you today, members, is to erect a new air dome. The position of the dome is indicated on page 13 of your report, members, where there's a white box on the aerial photo. So that shows you where the dome is actually going to be located on the tennis club site. As I said, the land rises around the playing area some 10 to 12 metres until it reaches the rear gardens and properties on Earthamar Road and Glenorgle Road. The area to the north, the proposed dome, is the rest of the tennis club. And beyond that, we've got the detached properties on Church Road. The nearest dwelling, as for Glenorgle Court, is some 100 metres from the development, albeit again in an elevated position with views partially obscured by existing trees on the eastern part of the site. To the west of the tennis court and beyond that, the site boundary is Newbury's Fields. As I've said, vehicle access is via a surface lane at Church Road, and that's quite a constrained access. The air dome is proposed to be erected from the 1st of October to the 1st of April, so a period of 6 months, and it's to enable, obviously, to be used for tennis purposes and for an ongoing coaching program that's currently being run by the tennis club. It's a substantial structure. It'll measure 34.2 metres by 37.4 metres and reaches 11 metres in height at the top of the dome. It's made of a white PVC membrane, and it will be inflated by plant that will be installed on the western side of the dome. The plant also provides heating in cooler months, and there will be obviously points of access. On the report, members, you'll note the planning history, and I just need to draw your attention to an earlier application that was to replace some grass courts on site with all-weather tennis courts. And through the grant of that permission, we secured a number of measures because of the access arrangements being difficult to the site, and that particular scheme potentially resulting in additional traffic coming to the site. We secured measures in the way of a barrier and a control system whereby the use of the car park is more limited. We're not stopping vehicles coming to the tennis club, but trying to regulate them, encouraging the members to use the car parking facilities within the Halo car park and other facilities within the town, and encouraging members, if they can, to walk the site. That is preferable. We've notified residents of this application, and a number of objections have been received, and they are recorded on the report, as is a summary of those objections on pages 15 and 16. It's obviously referred to your consideration today because of those objections, and I'll try and give you a bit of a brief review of the appraisal of the application from our perspective in the light of those concerns and the policy framework that we have. The facility, or the idea of improving a tennis club facility like this, I think we can probably all agree is a good thing. It's a long-standing facility, and if it's going to encourage people to exercise and play, I think in a very broad sense, that's something that we welcome. However, there are a number of key issues that need to be considered, and they're set out in detail on page 18 of the report, members. I'll try and go through those briefly if I can now, and it kind of reflects on some of the concerns that residents have raised. One issue has been a concern that the dome and the operation of the inflation and heating equipment could generate noise and disturbance with the residence properties quite close to the site. Noise is currently generated by activities on the court as part of the lawful use of the site, and I guess you would consider the baseline levels to be that activity. The question is whether the dome has the potential to create any further adverse noise. Residents have voiced concerns about the potential use of the dome when it could be used for other recreational activities, but we're looking to impose conditions to control its future use, basically for the playing of tennis. And also, there will be conditions that will regulate the time that the facility can actually be used. And we believe in doing so, that will offer a safeguard in terms of noise in that regard. In terms of noise coming from the actual compressor units that will keep the dome inflated, it's important to note, members, that those compressors will run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But the information that we've received regarding the noise generated by those generators will be such that it's not going to cause a problem. That's not my view. That's the view that we've taken from officers in shared regulatory services who've looked and assisted us with this application. So in their opinion, their professional opinion, noise from the units will not have a significant impact on the amenities of residents, even accounting for their 24-hour operation. So overall, on the basis of the activities, I don't think the noise is going to cause an impact on the residents. As I've said, it's not an insignificant building. It's 11.5 meters high, building, air dome, considerably taller than the other structures within the complex. And as I said, properties are not that far away from it. Properties on Glanogher Road and Merthyr Road, they're elevated, and the dome will be visible, in my view, from the rear elevations of those properties, particularly from the first floor windows, and the glow of the lighting above the dome will also be visible, but that's unlikely to be obtrusive. And again, the lighting will control that it will be no later than 9:30 will it be actually operational. The nearest property to the north of the site on Church Road is a detached dwelling, which I referred to earlier, called 4 Glanogher Court. Now that's got side-facing windows, and in the summer months, it's reasonably well screened by the trees on the embankment of the site. But of course, in the autumn and winter months, there's less screening, so that dome will be visible from those properties. But I have to say, there's a degree of separation, some 97 to 100 meters separating the dome from that property. So I don't think we can make a case that it's going to have a significant impact in terms of overbearing from the perspective of the occupiers of that property. Other residents on Church Road have also raised concerns, and they're at a slightly different level. They're lower, so arguably potentially a greater impact. But again, some considerable distance separates the dome from those properties, and there are no side-facing habitable windows in those properties that will be looking directly over the dome. So I think in terms of impact on those residents, in terms of domination outlook, I don't think it would be that significant. No doubt, however, that they've enjoyed a view across the tennis courts with the backdrop of the rising ground and the woodland, and this dome is going to appear quite an odd and almost an alien feature initially when it's erected. But got to remember, the views that they've enjoyed are not protected in any way from a planning perspective. So in that regard, I think the impact on those residents is not sufficient grounds for us to be concerned in terms of any conflict with policy. The visual impact, we have to consider that, because Newbridge Fields obviously is well used by many people in the county borough, and there are footways and playing areas very close to this, and this dome will be visible from those from Newbridge Fields, and again, enjoying views across towards the tennis court of the background of the woodland. It's going to obscure those views, but again, those views as you pass through Newbridge Fields are transient. You're moving through. It's a kind of sequence of views. So I don't think, again, the visual impacts in that regard are significant for us to be concerned. Highway safety, this is probably the one issue that has caused some concern with residents, because they have provided some comments on how the measures that we've introduced with the barrier and the car parking control scheme, how that has had some impact as it kind of beds in, because members of the club are having to get used to not being able to drive and park on the tennis car park and use alternative arrangements. So the parking and delivery management plan that we've agreed is a live document, so it gives us the opportunity to go back to the tennis club and discuss with them if issues are arising. I think the important thing to note from members' perspective is that there's actually potentially a slight reduction maybe in traffic movements to this site. What's happened when we gave consent for them to replace the grass courts with all-weather courts, the way that they've configured the arrangements on site is such that 2 of the courts have not actually been created. So there's a reasonable case to say, in terms of traffic movements, it's probably the status quo in that regard. So from a highway safety perspective, not sufficient grounds, I think, again, for us to be concerned. Rob Morgan, my colleague in Highways, may be able to answer any questions that you may have in that regard. The other last fundamental issue I just wanted to bring to your attention is the potential impact of the lighting on protected species. Not surprisingly, with a lot of trees and the river close by, there's quite a healthy bat population locally, and there was concern that perhaps the lighting could have an impact. Now, we've had some discussions with obviously the club and the consultant that they brought in to look at light spillage, and it looks as though that is going to be limited and controlled, but we have imposed a condition that will look to agree a scheme so we make sure there's safeguards in place in terms of protecting local biodiversity interests. Again, members should note that the lighting will go off at 9:30, and possibly important to remember that this dome will be erected in predominantly the autumn and winter months, when the local bat population is less active anyway, so the amount of impact should again be limited. Members, I think in conclusion, we believe the facility is broadly in line with policy. There are constraints to this site, the access, parking arrangements, the close proximity of residents, the biodiversity interests. But through the imposition of planning conditions, we think that we can adequately control this development. And on balance, notwithstanding the concerns that have been expressed by residents, we believe the development is acceptable, and the recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. Could I have a move in a second, please?
I'll formally move, Chair.
Second.
Thank you very much. First speaker, Councillor Clark, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for that, Phil. I think the size of it is a little bit overwhelming, I've got to be honest. I think it works out about 111 feet by 121 feet by 37 foot high. So it's quite a huge structure. I noticed that it's in white PVC. I mean, is there any other colour? I mean, white is going to be quite, you know, reflect light, etc., being so close to some properties. I noticed, because obviously I'm only going on the picture that I've got on page 13, that there are a lot of trees around that area. Are they trees that, you know, got their leaves all year round, or are they shedding leaves? Because obviously once that happens, then there's going to be more light pollution, isn't there? But basically, my question was, couldn't it be a different colour to blend in and more, you know, if it was a green, for instance?
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Fair point. It's the design that's been presented to us. I'm not aware. I think I have looked online when we received the planning application with air domes, and obviously it's fairly new because I don't think we've had an application for a similar facility in the county borough. So it was new to me, new to us. I did look online, and I think there are air domes of different colours. Now I think they've gone to a particular manufacturer, who I think is an Italian company, that have obviously presented this particular design to the club and the club to us. It's not beyond the possibility of considering a condition regarding agreeing the colour of it. I'm trying to think on my feet as to whether the actual colour is important in terms of the operation of tennis, in terms of its light, and whether there's any, I don't know, reflective light in terms of the lighting arrangements. But as I said, it's before us as a white colour. The other ones I've seen, I think there's one in Cardiff, and I think that has a white finish to it as well. As I said, I honestly can't say that there are other colours. I think there probably are, but I can't say definitively if there are reasons why the tennis club have specifically presented this colour to us. In terms of the surrounding areas, perhaps if I can just, Chair, if you don't mind, I'm just going to put an image on the screen
please.
just to help members. I'm using Google Maps here just to assist. You can see the dome, if you can see my cursor, that the actual dome is going down in that corner. You can see this woodland around the site. Now that's a broadleaf woodland. So I'm going to be fair to say that in the winter months, that does thin out. It's not evergreen. It's predominantly broadleaf woodland there. So the property I was talking about for Glanogle Court is the one that I'm sort of circling now, and there's the other properties on Church Road, and you can see here then again Glanogle Road and Merthyr Mawr Road. So you've got this woodland area. It undoubtedly thins out during the winter months. That's an absolute given. So you know that is what it is. But it's still, I think you've got the elevation in the sense that you've got the elevated properties, Glanogle Road and Merthyr Mawr Road, that are probably closer to the dome but elevated, and these properties then that are further away, but the ones on Church Road here are actually closer to it. So, yeah, I sorry, Councillor Clark. In answer, I don't honestly know in terms of the colour, and the woodland surrounding it is a broadleaf woodland. So I think that's an answer to your question then.
Are you happy with the answer, Councillor Clark?
Yeah, yes, thanks, Chair. If I could just say that, you know, obviously, if it could be a different colour, I would be happier, you know, with the application. And I understand, obviously, the need for, you know, leisure activities, tennis and outdoor play. So, you know, I would be happier if it wasn't white, I've got to be honest.
Perhaps you can come back to us, Phil. You can inquire, please, and come back to Councillor Clark.
Yes, Chair, I could do that. As I said, we haven't got a condition on that requires the materials of construction to be, or the finishes to be approved. I suppose because there is a pre-commencement condition regarding the lighting, Chair, and I probably take a lead from Jonathan and Rodri and Rod as to whether it would be reasonable to impose a planning condition to agree the finishes of the dome. And then we could have a bit of discussion with the tennis club regarding the colour of the dome. I don't think that's particularly unreasonable, Chair.
I bring Jonathan now, please. 1 second, please, Phil. Jonathan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. For the purposes of the recording, my name is Jonathan Parsons, the Group Manager for Planning and Development Services. I think, Phil, what he's suggesting is that it may be viable to put a planning condition on to agree the colour. It may well be that they don't manufacture them in any other colour, possibly. In which case, then that sort of limits the options. But we can certainly put that condition on, and we can discuss with the tennis club fairly quickly after this meeting and see what the possibility is. Do you, Councillor Clark, would this be something that you would wish to be informed of, or are you happy for officers to?
I think I would just be happy for officers to go ahead and basically negotiate the colour. If it's not possible, it's not possible. I just think it would be less obtrusive myself, you know. So by all means, let the officers see what they can do.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor.
We'll add that condition.
And Jonathan?
Chair, sorry, Chair, to come in. If we're going to add a condition, I know clearly it's been moved and seconded already with the conditions that are attached to Phil's report. But just if we move and second, I could just signify we're happy to add the condition we've just discussed, Chair, so that members know then going forward we're debating not only the conditions on the report, but also the additional condition about agreeing the finishes.
Right. Tell me, Rod, can I go to each member individually and ask them about the preference of the colour?
No, I think, Chair, what's being proposed is that that a condition will be added to the recommended conditions which are on the agenda, and that condition would give the officers then, it would impose that the developer has to agree with the council's planning officers the finishes. So in that sense, as John has said, you'd have to investigate.
Right.
Is anything else but white available? We don't know at the moment, do we, Chair?
It was Richard. Who's second, Rich, please?
Chair.
Was it?
I did, yeah.
Right. Could you withdraw it, please?
Chair, I'm not going to withdraw it. I think what the officer had said is practical. There could be cost implications here. I have got no problem with white whatsoever, Chair. And I'm still staying what I say. I moved the resolution and I'm keeping to that.
Chair, I wasn't looking for it to be withdrawn, just amended perhaps to give the officers that one extra condition. So it's up to members.
Ma'am, anybody tell it? All right, let me take the two speakers. I got two more, one more speaker. I got Councillor Edwards and then Mike Kern. Let me take these two, then we come back then, please. Councillor Edwards, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, this is going to be quite a huge structure. We had a training session yesterday where differences in climate are obviously prevalent and will be prevalent going forward. My concern is the anchorage of this, how secure it is, how tried and tested structures of this kind are in the very high winds, similar to what we've been subjected to over the last couple of days. Is there evidence to support that these things are tried and tested and we will not see it somewhere going across the sky over Bridgend?
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Phil, can you come back in, please?
That's a good point in terms of strong winds, and of course, we're not far from the river either. Just to pick up on the fact that we had training yesterday on TAN 15, we did consult Natural Resources Wales on the planning application, and the site is at flood risk, and not surprisingly given its proximity to the river. And they have actually recommended that we put additional notes on the permission, just bringing to the attention of the club sort of flood prevention measures that they may wish to consider in terms of the design and the construction, or the erection, should we say, of this dome. In terms of the councillor's question, in terms of our own experience, we've got pretty limited experience of these domes. They are quite prevalent across the country, across the UK. I think these facilities have been used elsewhere, and there is a degree of security and anchorage with them. They're not easily moved, and they're actually they're quite, although they appear like tents, there's quite a weight to them as well. And I think there is, from what I've read around it, and I won't claim to be an expert, that would be foolish, but there does seem to be anchorage, because at the end of the day, it's a facility the club are going to erect, they're going to pay for, and it's in their greater benefit that it's secure to the site and isn't going to be lifted up in any strong winds. I think possibly, to some extent, the kind of bowl area around the tennis centre with the rising ground, which is on the kind of, let's get my geography, on the southern side of it, where most of our prevailing wind is coming from the southwest, it probably does offer a little bit of shelter in terms of the way the geography of this site particularly is, in the corner that they've chosen for this to go. That might be, it's not in any of the submissions why they've chosen that particular part of the tennis club site, but that may be part of the factors. They thought that if they put it in this more this part of the site, it was shielded a little bit from wind. So I think, councillor, from what I've read, I think there will be sufficient anchorage to hold that down. And as you rightly say, we don't see it blowing across Newbridge Fields in the strong winds that we could get in the winter, particularly that they wanted to erect it over the autumn and winter months. I think I'm reasonably comfortable that isn't going to be a particular problem with this site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Mike Keane, please. Good. Councillor Kern, please.
Can you hear me now, Chair? Sorry.
We can, yes. Sorry, Chair.
Yeah, Councillor Edwards has taken the words out of my mouth. I mean, that is exactly what I was thinking. I looked on site at these domes and I found a couple of sites, and all they are, as far as I can see, are pegged down or they use ballast. So, yeah, that's exactly what Councillor Edwards, I was concerned on the safety issue of seeing it flying over somewhere. That's all. So I got to agree with Councillor Edwards. It does need to be looked at. I would have thought the safety side of it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, I'll go back to Richard. You want white?
Well, Chair, that's the application. If somebody wants to put an amendment in to change the colour, that's they can do that. But I'm going on what the officers have recommended, Chair.
Right, Rod, please, you better come in there, please.
Chair, I don't think I introduced myself for the purposes of a table earlier, so it's Roderick Jones, solicitor and legal advisor to committee. Yeah, it's just that what's been moved was, the recommendation for approval with the conditions that are on the agenda. The discussion, excuse me, following Councillor Clark's question, we suggested maybe we could put in another condition. Now, that answer to Councillor Granville, that wouldn't be saying that it must be a different colour, but it would simply be saying that there'd be an ability for the officers to agree what the finishes are when this, assuming it's approved, when it's erected. So it's not saying it should be one colour or another, Chair. And the only suggestion was whether that condition could be added to the conditions you already have. So it's simply a matter, do the mover and seconder, are they happy to say incorporate that extra condition in the motion that's already been made? Well,
I got
Councillor
Councillor Clark to come back in now a second, Rod, please. Councillor Clark, let to come back in a second, please.
Thanks, Chair. Basically, Rod has said it all. It's just a negotiation factor. Basically, it's not saying it's going to be red or white or blue or black. It's up to Phil, to find out if they'll just change the colour. It's not set in stone.
Thank you, Councillor. So we need to be flexible then. Phil?
Yeah, I as I said, the wording is fairly standard from a planning. It's just a no development should commence until the external finishes of the air dome have been. To have that dialogue with the developer anyway. They've got to submit details of the lighting. So in a sense, we're not holding it up because they've got to do that first anyway. So I think it's reasonably straightforward. Doesn't cause me any frustration. No.
Right. So, Phil, what if we can't change the colour?
Well, I think in fairness,
would it be better up to defer it today or?
No.
Well, I wouldn't want to do that because I think this is something that members would like us to look into a little bit further. But if the fallback is they say, look, white is white, that's all we've got to be able to build it with, then we'll agree that. And it just gives us an opportunity to have that discussion then, yeah.
Let's go back to Councillor Clark. Nora, would you be happy with that, Nora?
Yeah, certainly. Obviously, if it can be changed, it can be changed. If it can't, it can't. But just for being so obtrusive, in the surrounding area, a different colour, I think would take, it would take that being so obtrusive down.
Thank you, Nora. Councillor Edwards, please.
Yeah, thanks again, Chair. I'd like to go back to the manufacturer, and I would like to see part of the planning stipulation being that it is anchored in a manner recommended by the manufacturer, capable of withstanding winds such as we've been subjected to in the last few days. You just can't put something of this size down on the ground. There should be recommended anchorage points capable of withstanding storms. And I think it would be remiss of us if we just allow this to go ahead without ensuring that it is anchored securely and safely. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. We can mark that now. Councillor Watts, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wondered if maybe the officers could answer. Has the All England Lawn Tennis Association been consulted either by yourselves or the club itself for advice on such a dome, the colour, the way it's secured and so on? Surely they would have information at their fingertips on this sort of thing, because I'm sure it's not the first application. So I just wondered if that's maybe a route to go down, a phone call or an email to them seeking advice. Thank you.
Bring Councillor Clark back in again, please.
Yes, I wanted to come back on Councillor Edwards's concern. I mean, we all know, I know on a smaller scale of these bouncy castles that have taken off, and unfortunately children have been injured or indeed killed. So, you know, down, I would have thought to some sort of concrete block, to be honest, would be needed for something that is 111 foot by 121 foot and 37 foot high. You know, it's a huge structure.
So we got a dilemma here. We got the colour. Always going to be anchored down. And I don't know, it's a bit between the members here. I don't know, it's not going forward or backwards here.
Yeah, I think we could put conditions on requiring details of the fixings to the ground. I'm sure they'll do it all properly. I think it's probably grant funded as well by the LTA. I think, Phil, correct me if I'm wrong. So I think
correct,
they'd be remiss if they did it on a whim. I think it'll all be done to the proper specifications and make sure that it's not going to have a knock-on effect, if potentially for surrounding properties.
Thank you, Rod.
Chair, if I could just come in as well, I think we've got to just remind members that we are looking at material planning considerations when we make a determination, and whilst the issues that have been raised are entirely valid, and I fully take on board what's been said, I think we also have to understand that we can't control every single detail and aspect of the development that lies outside the planning system. So I think, as Rodri said, I think if we were to put a condition on about the method of securing, then we can certainly agree that before the development starts. And also bear in mind that we have consented to temporary structures in the past, and sometimes those structures are secured purely by their own inertia. But it's slightly different in this case, where you've got an inflatable structure that has been pointed out, would potentially could break free. But I don't know whether the risk of that, or the danger of that, is sufficient to withhold planning consent in here. But I'm sure that if we can get that information and agree the scheme to ensure that it's secured to the ground via permanent means, then we can overcome those concerns. And just for members' attention as well, is that if this wasn't secured to the ground permanently, then it wouldn't actually require planning consent.
No, that's fair enough.
It wouldn't be classed as a building. So it's the fact that it is secured to the ground that means that we are determining this application before us. So a tent, for example, or marquee wouldn't necessarily require planning consent, and this would probably fall into that category. But it's the degree of permanence here is material, and I think we can resolve that through planning conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jonathan. Now I got no more speakers. Right, I've ever moved in a second. Are you all in favour with the conditions?
Aye.
Yes.
Second.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're happy about that then?
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And Phil will come back to us, Nora.
Thank you.
And Councillor Edwards as well. Thank you very much. Right. Move on. Right. 45 South Road per call. Item agenda number 8, please. And this is Sandra's. All you do is Rod, please.
Sandra's not with us this week, so I'll take over just for these.
All right, thank you, Rod.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. For the purposes of the recording, my name is Rodri Davis, and I am the Development and Building Control Manager at BCBC. This application seeks to vary 3 conditions applied to a previous consent for the redevelopment of the former surgery at South Road. It forms one part of a pair of 3-storey semi-detached dwellings. Since the consent was issued, each approved residential has been sold to 3 separate developers. Works to implement the original consent for 45 South Road have started on site and are effectively unauthorised, as they have been undertaken without discharging the relevant preconditions imposed. This application therefore seeks to vary the conditions through the submission of details and to regularise the works that have been carried out so far. The application is referred to committee to consider the objections raised by numerous neighbouring occupiers as highlighted in the report. Going through the conditions, condition 6 refers to boundary treatments, and details have now been received illustrating the retention of the existing facing brick wall along the southern and eastern boundaries. The feather edge fencing erected on site is as proposed to be retained at a height of 1.8 metres. The wall along the southern boundary of the site, fronting Arlington Road, adjacent to the proposed car parking space, is proposed to be removed to allow access. The boundary treatment proposals for 45 South Road are acceptable in planning terms and are sufficient to vary the planning condition insofar as it relates to this property only. Condition 7 relates to off-street parking provision and required the submission of a scheme for provision of 8 off-street parking spaces for the wider site prior to the commencement of development. The conversion of 45 South Road required 3 off-street parking spaces to accord with SPG 17, and these will be provided on site. The condition is reworded to take this into account. Condition 8 also refers to highway safety and required the submission of a scheme detailing the boundary treatment along Arlington Road and South Road to ensure the vision displays for vehicles are sufficient. The highways officer is satisfied with the arrangement, and the condition can be varied insofar as it relates to 45 South Road. The application is therefore recommended for approval and effectively creates a new consent. All other conditions are reapplied to maintain sufficient control. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Roddy. Could I be moving a second, please?
I'll formally move, Chair.
Second.
Thank you very much. I've got no speakers at all. So all in favour of the recommendation with conditions?
Yeah.
Aye.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Aye.
much. Right. Right. 45A, South Road, Porthcawl.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is relates to the same wider site, but it's a different element of it, of the 3 units. So it seeks to retain the residential unit as built at 45A South Road. This is a detached building used that used to form the mother and baby clinic at the rear of the surgery. As mentioned with the previous related application, since the consent was issued, each approved residential unit has been sold to 3 separate developers. The original consent allowed for the conversion of this outbuilding or annex to a residential unit. The internal arrangement of the property has been altered since the commencement of work on this building, as well as changes to the external appearance of the building. Therefore, the development is not in compliance with previously approved plans. This application therefore seeks retrospective approval for the retention of the changes in order to regularise the unauthorised works. Again, the application is referred to committee to consider the objections raised by neighbouring occupiers as highlighted in the report. The external changes comprise the raising of the height of the roof, the installation of a flue in the western roof slope, the installation of a high-level window in the northern elevation of the building, and the demolition and replacement of a single-storey lean-to extension to be replaced by a flat roof extension. Whilst it is acknowledged that the height of the roof has increased by around 30 centimetres, without the benefit of planning permission, this application seeks to regularise the changes, and the increase in overall ridge height has been assessed on its own merits. It is not considered to be so harmful to the character or appearance of the building or wider street scene when viewed from public vantage points. The installation of a flue in the western roof slope is not prominent in the street scene. The existing lean-to extension has been replaced by a flat roof extension and is acceptable in design and residential amenity terms, as long as the conditions are applied to restrict its use from being used as a balcony. Finally, the high-level window in the gable end will not allow any overlooking, and parking is provided within the site to serve the unit. On balance, the development is considered to be acceptable and is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions as previously mentioned. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rodney. I've got no more speakers. I'm going to move on a second. All in favour of the recommendation with conditions?
Jay, I didn't think you did have a mover and seconder on that particular one.
I'll formally move the recommendation.
Well, I did.
Second.
Thank you very much. I got a move on. I got a second, Rod.
Thank you, Jay.
All in favour of the recommendation with conditions?
Aye.
Right.
Thank you very much. Right. Item 10 here, appeals, please. Jonathan?
Thank you, Chair. Not much to report on the appeals side. We've had a couple of appeals submitted, one of which is for a tree preservation order, one is a householder development. Of note, I would say the TPO appeal is one that we don't usually get many of these, and members may be aware that with tree preservation orders, the main issue is always the amenity issue, the amenity that the tree has in the area, and not so much the ecological issues. So in this case, the applicant or the appellant had applied to remove a number of trees from a site, and planning consent. Well, these trees are protected by an order, and planning tree preservation order consent was refused on the basis that it would impact on the visual amenity of the area. But also included we include a reason for refusal based on some ecological value as well, and that was due to the fact that the site is part of a sink or a site of importance for nature conservation. So there is some ecological benefit to retaining the trees, but also the main impact of the TPO appeal will be on visual amenity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you,
Chair,
Jonathan.
can I formally move we note the appeals?
Can I just
Thank you
ask?
very much.
Can I just ask a question on it? I have got my hand up.
Nora, when you're ready, please.
Thank you. If I could just ask Jonathan, I just want an understanding of actually where these trees are. I know it says Kevin Glass, I take that is wood. Is that on like Llangewydd Road, or just for my understanding whereabouts it might be?
It's Tondy Road. Tondy Road opposite the Ravens
it's on a main road, off the main
road.
road.
On the main road, right, okay.
Gent to Penavay. I'd see if we can bring a map up. I'm not quite sure.
Right, because obviously
it's yeah.
Sorry, I thought it was at more, Kevin Glass way, and it's not, obviously.
Oh, and Craig has worked his magic and has. If you look on the far right of that picture, you can see the river, and then there's a main road was running through the sort of centre of that image,
Right.
and the site is where that heavy tree cover is on the left hand side of the road.
Right, so it's basically opposite sort of the industrial units on the right hand side.
That's right, yes.
Right,
and there's
okay.
car showrooms and
yeah, and I know. Thanks a lot for that.
All right, Councillor. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Can you note the report, please?
I'll formally move we note it, Chair.
Second. Thank you. Right. Training log, please. Jonathan. You muted, Jonathan.
I thought I got away with that today, but not.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We had quite an interesting training session on technical advice note 15 yesterday. It was well attended by members of this committee and the wider elected members of the authority. Yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. It's very important to bring members up to speed with what's happening with TAN 15. We've got quite a few items on the training agenda as we go forward into the new year, Our next committee is in January, and we will aim to have a training session again on the Wednesday before committee, and that subject we'll be looking at is minerals. It's a minerals update, and again, important issue. It's a function that we have. We are a minerals planning authority as well, and we do have a number of active mineral sites in the county borough. So we've got an officer from Carmarthenshire coming down to do that training session for it. I say coming down, it's going to be virtual, so he's not actually going anywhere. But he will be doing that training session for us. It will also cover aspects such as the monitoring of the sites and basically what is happening on our active sites. There'll probably be a little bit on the sort of legislation and the policy surrounding minerals development, and members will have opportunity to ask questions on that as well. So that's the next training session, and also we have sessions lined up on tree policy and green infrastructure, public rights of way and amenity space, and in building in gardens. Now we will be bringing to you members as well. We'll be having a workshop or training session on changes to our supplementary planning guidance for householder development and residential development, and included within that SPG are going to be policies on minimum garden space or minimum garden sizes, which is something we haven't currently got in our current guidance. So we've got officers working on this SPG. We are looking to finalise the proposals for that sometime in February next year, and then we will aim to bring a future session to you members to discuss that at a future date. It's time we overhauled our SPGs, and we're looking to do this collectively. In our design SPGs, and looking to do this collectively and perhaps merging one or two of the documents into one comprehensive guide. So again, as usual with SPGs, we will be looking at volunteers from Development Control Committee to act as the member liaison and the member champion to help shape that SPG before we bring it back to members in the new year. The other topic that we will be looking to bring to you members is a piece about historic environment and delegation of authority from CADU to determine our own listed building applications. And we have colleagues from the conservation team who will be doing a presentation and a training session on that before bringing a report to committee to seek committee's endorsement of the authority being able to determine listed building consents. At the moment, the current way it operates currently is that we can make recommendations on listed buildings, and we then have to refer it to CADU for final determination. But with having delegation, we can actually make decisions on some of those applications ourselves. So that's quite an important development for us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jonathan. I got no speakers, and then we got no urgent business. Right. Thank you very much all attending the meeting today. You all have a nice Christmas and Happy New Year, and take care of yourselves. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Right.
Thank you.